you think Big Meech like told on somebody to get out, snitched, did anything extra?
No. Let me tell you why. Big Meech paperwork is public records. There is no proof that Big Meech said, hey, bust him, bust him, bust him. Whoa. Big Meech, bro, I ain't gonna lie. That man got to that compound and man, he had some of the guys I would never think that would get BMF, ENT on the left side of his neck, man.
In here with a 27-year sentence based on Demetrius Flannery, as you all know as Big Meech, and Tammy Cowens, known in the paperwork as CS1.
Right.
Confidential source 1. So what Big Meech did was called a third-party cooperation.
Big Meech, man, you know, he just carries weight. But lately, the talk has kind of gone from like the whole BMF Empire story to accusations, like some serious stuff. You know, did he snitch? Did he cooperate? And it feels like it all got kicked up again after Meech met up with Rick Ross. It really seems like that kind of set 50 Cent off.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? These old questions about cooperation, they pop up again and again. So what we want to do is really get into it, see what's out there, what are people saying. You know, for you listening, our mission today is to break down those claims and figure out what the details might actually be telling us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the heart of it is, did Big Meech snitch?
Yeah.
And a big argument is when you look at the paperwork, the legal stuff, especially from his conviction for Demetrius Flannery, there's no direct record of him like giving names. You know, no, hey, bust this guy, nothing like that.
That's crucial. I mean, if there was a statement like that on record, that would be it, right? But just because it's not there, that doesn't mean the conversation is over. Cooperating can take a lot of forms. And legal cases, they often use a mix of direct testimony and, you know, circumstantial evidence. Now, the documents for his 27-year sentence, they do mention Tammy Cowens. She's listed as confidential source 1, CS1.
Right, and this is where it gets complicated. The discussion around this case brings up third-party cooperation, right? The story goes there was a government informant, Cohen, and the claim is that Big Meech threatened him. But here's the key point people are making. Even if someone like Tammy Cowen gave information, does that automatically mean Big Meech himself sat down with the feds and said, go ahead?
Exactly. The difference between someone in Big Meech's circle maybe cooperating and Big Meech himself actively working with the authorities, those are two very different things, and both are part of this whole debate.
And then we've got Taryn Gangster Williams, right? He comes in with another major viewpoint. This isn't just some guy with an opinion. He did time with Big Meech, and he completely denies the snitching claims.
Yeah, Gangster Williams' take is important because he was right there in prison. He says that Meech had huge respect among the inmates. Like, he was practically running the place, almost like a kingpin, even locked up.
It's pretty wild when you hear the details, right? They say so many inmates just showed Meech straight up respect. Gangster Williams talks about how, like, 25 guys would follow him to the weights, and then afterwards they'd share wine and food, talking about life outside.
Yeah.
It paints this picture of real leadership, you know, and like a brotherhood.
It does. And Williams, he doesn't believe for a second that Meech would snitch. He saw firsthand how Meech acted, the respect he got. That's where his belief comes from.
And there's also this interview with Gangster Williams that's popped up again, and it adds even more to the story. It goes deeper into how much control Meech had in prison. And Meech himself said, like, I'm not offering any connect or hooking anyone up when they get out. He was focused on his own situation.
That's interesting, right? It shows a certain maybe selfishness or maybe just keeping his distance from trying to pull strings on the outside while he was inside. And the really fascinating part is what comes next. The story that Big Meech had a real shot at escaping. He could have gone back to being a millionaire, supposedly.
Yeah, huge. Right. But the key thing is he stayed put. He did his time. And that, according to Gangster Williams, earned him massive respect on the streets. It just reinforces this image of him sticking to a certain code.
Absolutely. Choosing to serve his sentence instead of breaking out, that says a lot about how people saw him in that world. Now let's go back to 50 Cent's accusations. The story is he's basing his claims on information from Tammy Cowen.
Full circle, huh? So 50 Cent is using information supposedly from Tammy Cowen, while you've got someone like Gangster Williams who was right there with Meech saying, no way. Yeah. And then there's the idea that the beef between 50 Cent and Big Meech really blew up after Meech linked up with Rick Ross after he got out.
Right. That brings up a possible reason for 50 Cent to react so strongly. This alliance with a rival, maybe that's what sparked the snitching accusations coming back hard. 50 Cent, he went public, accused Meech of cooperating, even said he'd stop the BMF show.
And Meech? He's denied it publicly, said he never cooperated. Then you have 50 Cent claiming to have the real paperwork. But as people have pointed out, those documents have been around, and they don't directly say Meech was an informant. It comes down to how you read what's already out there.
Exactly. Having documents that mention other people or outline the legal case, it doesn't automatically mean Big Meech himself was a cooperating witness, in the sense of giving information for a lighter sentence. To really get the weight of these accusations and what they mean, we got to look at the history of BMF itself, the Black Mafia family.
Okay, so BMF, they started in Southwest Detroit, 1985. The Flannery brothers, Demetrius Big Meech, and Terry Southwest T. They built it. These guys weren't small time, they connected directly with Mexican cocaine suppliers, and their rise was fast.
So they just exploded, and by the early 2000s, they'd created BMF Entertainment. Officially, it was a music company promoting artists and such, but really, it was a front for their drug operation, which was huge and making serious money. Their influence, it went way past the streets, deep into hip-hop.
Yeah, their connections were a big deal. They were linked to major names like Diddy, Jay-Z, T.I., even 50 Cent for a while. And the lifestyle. Lavish, man. Multiple houses worth millions, luxury cars, the whole image of success in that world.
That over-the-top lifestyle, it became part of their fame. But in the end, it was what happened within the organization that took them down. The tension between the brothers, Big Meech and Southwest T, they split. And that gave law enforcement an opening.
Yeah, that brotherly feud, it was a major factor. By 2005, the feds had busted their operation. Big Meech and Southwest T were arrested, convicted, and so were many others in BMF. But even after they were locked up, the BMF legend lived on. It inspired books, Rip Ross's famous song, and of course 50 Cent's TV series and documentaries. Their story, it's still relevant.
It is, and these questions about Big Meech maybe cooperating, it just adds another layer to an already complex story. So let's recap. We've got a situation where there's no clear public proof that Big Meech specifically named names to law enforcement. We've got Gangster Williams, who knew Meech in prison, and he defends his character completely.
And on the other side, we've got 50 Cent making accusations, which seem to have gotten louder after Meech connected with Rick Ross. The accusations are supposedly based on what Tammy Cowan said, but there's no clear evidence that Meech himself agreed to cooperate or did anything directly. And we've looked at the history of BMF, how they rose and fell, which is important for understanding why there's so much attention on Big Meech and why there are so many different opinions about him.
Right. And we have to remember, we're talking about what we know, what's out there. This brings up a final thought. The line between what's public and what happens in private can be blurry, and some worlds have really strict codes. So what does snitching really mean? How much can we ever really know, especially when there's so much at stake, personal stuff, money, all tied up in keeping a certain story alive?